Welcome to a new review. Today we're going to talk about the new support for ice barriers. Now, ice barriers have 10 new cards that have been revealed up to December 2020, and these are the cards I'm going to talk about. But before we jump right off into this very long review, because ice barriers have a lot to talk about because they don't really have a lot of good cards to begin with, so there's a lot of things to go over them, I want to talk about how I'm going to structure set reviews, or should I say reviews from now on, which I want to make them a little bit weekly, and just like my deck things, I want to make them a little bit like a segment that like in the end you have the ability to choose the next one. And the reason why I want to make this weekly is because of the fact that honestly I love doing these, and secondly I also want these to be like consumable and smaller, so it will be easier for me to edit and for you to understand and for me to talk about these a little bit more in depth, rather than just saying, oh, this card is good, this card is bad, and just give rating without even thinking and being a little bit of a panic because I don't want to make the video a little bit too much long. And the rating of how cards should be rated should appear on screen. And the reason why I want to also rate the cards with stars and all that stuff is because of the fact I want to make a little bit of a conversation and essentially kind of also see what you think in terms of rating, as well as kind of like creating a conversation. Again, I'm saying that, and kind of let you know what I specifically think. So that's pretty much the idea behind that. But we're going to jump right into it after I'm going to remind you the usual subscriber thing. So if you want to subscribe to the channel and help this channel a little bit more to grow and see more videos like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and let's try to get to 2,000 to the end of the year. But beside that, like I said, we have a lot of things to cover with Ice Barrier, so let's jump right into the set review itself. Alright, without pulling any more stops, let's talk about the new support for Ice Barrier, and we're going to start off with the new Synchro Monster, Trishula Subzero Dragon of the Ice Barrier, and with every card I'm mostly going to talk about the effect basically because they're going to be appearing on screen. So for the Subzero Trishula, it has the same requirements as normal Trishula, same stats as normal Trishula, but it's 2 levels higher, and instead of like banishing 1 card from each place, it's banishing 3 cards your opponent control immediately on Synchro Summon. But when it dies, and or should I say destroyed by your opponent card effect, you get the ability to summon original Trishula from your extra deck or graveyard with 3,300 attack instead of 27, and you get the ability to pretty much have all of monsters your opponent control attack and negates their effects, which is a very, very powerful effect, and just like House of Champs said, it's pretty much bait to negations. But there is one particular problem with this card. First off, it's not the easiest to summon in its own archetype, and secondly, even if you're trying to bait 2 negations, the problem is the fact that, how should I say this? Oh yeah, getting 3 monsters on the field specifically for level 11 is not the most easiest things before even baiting all of the negations. So it's kind of seeing a little bit of way too much work. The other option is maybe playing a Dark Cooler and then use this to break your opponent's board and then build your own board. But again, it feels like way too much of a work. Another option is use this card as like a going first option with the Hacky Firebrux and leaving 2 monsters, which in total will make 11. But again, it's only something that I think the archetype would like to do itself. I don't really see this card being like really that amazing. I think it's absolutely incredible card for the Synchro tool engine, but I feel like the card itself is like, it does have a little bit of a problem in terms of like its summoning. I'm going to say this again, the card is amazing. I just want to put out the problems it has. So for me, this card is going to be rated 4 stars. I think the card is amazing, it's a very high 4 stars, but like I said, it's not enough to be 5 because of the problems that I mentioned. Next up, we're going to move on into the main deck monsters, which we have 6 of them, and we're going to start off with the structure deck ones, and we're going to start off with Wayne General of the Ice Barrier. This one is a Microcosmos for your opponent's spells and traps when it's on the field, and it can special summon itself when your opponent controls the monster and you control an Ice Barrier monster. When it's normal or special summon, it search an Ice Barrier spell or trap, but specifically right now there's only Ice Barrier spells because Pulse of Trishula is not an Ice Barrier trap, it's just Pulse of Trishula. So what do I think about this card? Well, first off, it's a level 5, which is very hard to summon, and it's kind of conflict with Prior of the Ice Barrier, which is a card that you might want to run in your deck regardless. Secondly, its special summoning requirement is really terrible, and it's only really good going second, but its 2 other effects are pretty good regardless. So I'm going to give this one 3 stars. It's a card that I would say you want to run 2 or 3 copies because of the lack of better other cards, and still it's a good card. The problem is, like I said, is the fact that you need specifically to have an Ice Barrier monster and your opponent have a monster. Why couldn't this card being like a Link Slayer effect? I don't really see this making Ice Barrier broken. If this would have been, if you control no monsters, special summon this card. Why is that not the effect of this card? I don't know. Regardless, like I said, still 3 stars. It just, unfortunately, it's lacked the support, or should I say, the cards to support it at the moment. Then we'll move on to probably one of my favorite cards in the artwork. Overall, there's maybe another one that can rival it, and that is Mirror Master of the Ice Barrier, not Mirror Ice of the Master Barrier. Regardless, this card is supposed to be Natalia, which is the Gishki lady, which was corrupted and then turned into, you know, the Evil Swarm, all that story in Dual Terminal. I don't really remember everything 100%, but this is her younger version before she got to be evil. And this card is pretty good. This card on summon, actually not on summon, this card, whenever you want to, you get to discard a card and then summon an Ice Barrier Turner directly from your deck, but you lock yourself to waters for the rest of the turn. And in the graveyard, it has the ability to, how should I say this? If you will activate an Ice Barrier effect to, you know, discard a card or send a card from your hand to the graveyard, one of the send cards could be her instead, which is really, really cool. Now, I'm not really 100% sure if you need to have a card beforehand still, even though she's in the graveyard. So, like, for example, let's say you were trying to use a second copy of her to summon her, and then she's in the graveyard, and then you use the first one effect to essentially, like, to be the cost for the second one. Do you still need to have the card to begin with in your hand? I'm not really 100% sure. Let me know in the comments down below. But I think regardless, this card is very, very good. The other effect is, and the last one, which is like his own floodgate, is the fact that she's able to kind of like stop monarchs if you have, or should I say tribute summoning, if you have another Ice Barrier monster, which is pretty cool. It's actually a very significant effect, a lot more than people think. Regardless, I think this card is still a 4-star card. I don't think it's like the best card out of all of this because it still has a discard cost, so that's a little bit sometimes a problem. And unfortunately, the discard, you don't really have good cards to discard at the moment that you really, really want to discard. Still, it's a 3-off, it's a great card, and it's starting your plays, and I think this card is absolutely amazing, also gorgeous artwork. Next up, we have Vessel Miko of the Ice Barrier, which is supposed to be the young Ariel. And this card has a nice, I guess, floodgate against making your opponent's only monsters being in defense position, but mostly what you care about is the 2 special summoning effects it has. If you have another Ice Barrier monster, you get to special summon this card from your hand. If this card is in your graveyard and you have another Ice Barrier monster, you get to banish this card from your graveyard and summon a level 1 token for Ice Barriers. This card, by itself, already just moved the archetype by a lot. This card is a 5-star and is the best card in the entire new support because of the fact that it's a free special summon with no conditions beside controlling another Ice Barrier. And it's not 1 special summon, it's 2. And you can use both of the effects per turn as long as you control an Ice Barrier monster, which should not be that hard, at least for one of them. So this card is absolutely amazing, and it's an absolute 3-off in my opinion, and I wish it was a level 3 because that could also make this card good with the next one, which is Frost Spirit, but you know, this card is still absolutely amazing. And speaking of Frost Spirit of the Ice Barrier, this one has a nice effect of like making your opponent monster's attack and defense drop by 500 if you control another Ice Barrier. You don't really care about the floodgates most of the time. Most of what you care about is the fact that this card, during the main phase, allowing you to send a level 3 or lower Ice Barrier monster and become the same level as that until the end of the turn. And it's a tuner, so you summon it with Mirror Master. So this card is pretty nice. But just like Mirror Master, is unfortunately suffer from the fact that you don't really have good enough targets to send to the graveyard. And if what her name effect, Vessel Miko, would have been a level 3, which does kind of also good that it's a level 4, but if it would have been a level 3, or this could have also sent a level 4, this card would have actually a good target to send, because unlike Mirror Master, you send from your deck to your graveyard. So this card is still a very good card, and just a card that you just use for summoning the Haki Fibrex and doing all of your plays. But like I said, the problem is you don't really have such a good target to send to the graveyard, so this card is still just a 4-star in my opinion for its own archetype. Next up, we have the 2 cards that didn't came on in the structure deck in terms of monsters, and we're going to start off with Ascendant of the Ice Barrier, which you contribute this card to summon a level 5 or higher Ice Barrier from your hand to your side of the field. And the second effect is, during the turn it was sent to the graveyard, except the turn, or should I say, during the... It has another effect in the graveyard. I'm sorry, I don't know why I got stuck on that. It has another effect in the graveyard that you can use except the turn it was sent to the graveyard. I don't know why I got stuck on that. Point is, if it used this effect, it cannot be in the same turn as it was sent to the graveyard, and that effect is, turning a level 3 or higher water monster, reduce its level by 2, special summon this card from the graveyard. This card have been that close from being okay, and that is its secondary effect. But the effect is, cannot be used in the same turn it was sent to the graveyard. Don't know why, it's just a thing. So this card is just a 2 stars, because its first effect, don't know why, don't summon a level 5 or higher, or level 5 or lower Ice Barrier from your deck to make the card useful to summon actually General Wen, or one of your other Ice Barrier monsters, because Ice Barriers doesn't really have a whole lot of high level monsters that you really want to summon. I don't know why this effect is a thing, I don't know why this makes this card so restrictive, but that is Ascendant of the Ice Barrier, apparently. It's still a card that you might want to run a 1 or 2 of, because you don't really have a lot of good cards, and it's probably a card that you might want to use still to send to graveyard with Frost Spirit, because it will be good for a later turn, but I don't understand why you cannot use it in the same turn you send it to the graveyard. It's really, really stupid. Then for the last monster, the card that got revealed in Lightning Overdrive, which I'm hoping there will be a little bit more than one card, and that is Mirror Judge of the Ice Barrier, which is supposed to be Natalia, which is Nuella's friend, in Gishki, which is the amazing art as well on this card. It's absolutely amazing, but unfortunately, even though this art is amazing, the effect is absolute trash, and it has 3 effects that are not really that relevant. The first one is a Red Eyes Flare Metal effect on a monster if you control another Ice Barrier monster in 2020, even though this effect would have been just being okay in 2014. So this card is already kind of like its floodgate is not that amazing, but maybe it has a better effect. No, it doesn't. The secondary effect, you can shuffle up to 2 Ice Barriers monsters from your graveyard and 2 cards from your opponent's graveyard, up to 2 as well, and then, you know, that's the effect. Now, if it was been a quick effect, I would say maybe you would consider to summon it, or run it in your deck, or if it was just an effect to happen in the graveyard, maybe, but it doesn't. It's an effect that specifically just happened, not a quick effect, not anything. The other effect is that you get to pretty much banish this card from your graveyard if you control another Ice Barrier monster to turn the monster attack from attack position to defense position. Yeah, this card, amazing artwork, garbage effects in my opinion. 1 star, and the weakest card of the entire archetype. I really wished it would have been better from the other card we're going to talk about, which is the second worst card. But this card, unfortunately, is the worst card, and that's really much a shame, because like I said, I really like the artwork of this card. Really a shame on that one. So that's it for the monsters. Now we'll move on to the 2 spells, and first off we're going to start off the Calm After the Storm of the Ice Barriers, I think the name of that card. And that is the card that says that you contribute any number of Ice Barriers and then summon the same number from level 4 lowers Ice Barriers directly from your deck with different names, of course. And then if the turn it was sent to and the turn it's in your graveyard except the turn it was sent there, you get to banish this card and retrieve one of your banished or in your graveyard Ice Barrier monsters. This is the 3 stars, because I feel like it suffers from the same problems that I have with Ascendant, but in a different way. This card could have just summoned any Ice Barrier monster. I don't really understand why it's not any Ice Barrier monster. Maybe it's kind of because you don't really want them to summon millions of boss monsters, but who cares? It's Ice Barriers. Give them the ability to play. Still a great card, I'm not going to say that, but I don't really understand the restriction on that one. Maybe just make that you can summon level 4 or lowers, and if you control another Ice Barrier monster, you can also summon 1 level 5 or higher. I guess that could have been a thing, but, you know, it's still a great card, I guess, regardless, in the archetype. The next card, however, I think is the better spell out of the 2, and that is Clear Wall of the Ice Barrier, which is a 4 stars, because this card is World Legacy Guard Dragon for Ice Barriers. It pretty much has the same effect to summon level 4 or lower Ice Barriers instead of a dragon, and it's have another nice protection effect. I wish, again, it would have been all Ice Barrier monsters, not level 4 or lower, but it's still a monster reborn, regardless, and making this card pretty good. And there's really no much to say about this card regardless. It's a 3-off, 100%. Then for the last card, which is the non-searchable trap, Pulse of Trishula, this allowing you to use activated effects in a sequence depending on the number of Synchro Summon Ice Barrier monsters you have with different names. And it's pretty much just this. The 3 effect is the same as like Trishula, full Trishula. 2 is like without the hand, and 1 is only from the field. And it does have a nice effect, I guess, in the graveyard, but unfortunately it's only protecting Synchro monsters, which is stupid. So I'm going to give this one 1 star because it's unsearchable, it's only protecting Synchros, it's requiring you to control Synchros, and unfortunately the Banish one is not always that relevant. It's still good, but being unsearchable, definitely dock like at least 2 stars. If it was searchable, this would have been maybe a 3-off, a 3 stars card, and you maybe run 1 copy of it because it would have been nice utility, because getting 1 Synchro is pretty okay for this archetype, so you could do that and maybe even set it up with like the Hacky Fibrex thing, which I mentioned with Subzero, so that's an option. But because of this kind of a restriction and the fact that it's not searchable, this card is pretty bad. But that's pretty much does it for all of the Ice Barrier cards. So what do I think about these cards overall? Well, I definitely think they could have done a better job, but they definitely make them from unplayable 1-star deck, they made them into a low tier 3 deck, which in my opinion earned from across the board, like I mentioned, or I shown, 3 stars. I think the archetype is playable, is good. It's not amazing, it's not like broken, it's good, it's good to play, it's a fun time, it's not really, it's a little bit still fragile in my opinion, but that's because of the fact that they don't really have a lot of good cards to begin with, except from Prior and Medallion, which is the only 2 cards, and then the Synchros, which extra cards, but mostly what you care about to begin with is the main deck to actually even make this function. So yeah, they do have some good cards to use, but not enough. But this new support is still pretty decent. So overall, like I said, it's a low tier 3 deck, which is 3 stars in my opinion. Very fun, and it's a deck that I'm kind of looking forward to once it will get out. And I'm definitely going to try to get my hands on it, just because I really like the artworks of the cards. Just even because of that. The artworks is absolutely amazing. But that's pretty much does it for the set reviews of Ice Barriers. Kind of gone a little bit more in details with the cards because of the fact, like I mentioned before, Ice Barriers does need a little bit more explanation because they don't also have another layer of effect, which is the the floodgate effect, and because of the fact they also need a little bit more explanation because they're a little bit complex in their effects, and because I need to go over why effects are bad and why they're good, because I'm going to make these videos a little bit more in depth if you're trying to understand what I mean. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that, and we're going to also represent right now on screen, or should I say talk about, the 4 options that I'm going to present for next week. So we have 4 options for this one. For this particular set review next week, we have either Raid Raptors and Phantom Knights together, which is one of my favorite things to do. I actually want to get to that in one point because I really like that. Second option will be Tri-Brigade, to talk about including the new cards from Blazing Vortex. Third option will be the Dragoonity support, because I think Dragoonity support is supposed to go in Ghost in the Past, and it's technically a Ghost in the Past kind of set review part 1. And the other option is definitely do a Ghost in the Past set review of all the cards currently out in the OCG, and calling this Ghost in the Past from, like, you know, the Selection 10, so talking about all the Selection 10 cards that's supposed to be from the Selection 10 in Ghost in the Past. So I'm probably going to name this just Ghost in the Past Part 1, and then when I get to Dragoonity, it will be Part 2. Regardless, 2 options from Ghost in the Past, and then 2 archetypes from Phantom Rage that I didn't really get to review because, unfortunately, if you don't know, my laptop got a little bit ruined for like a week and a half, and because of that, I kind of didn't get to finish Phantom Rage set review, and because of that I want to break this down. I think it's a little bit too late, and that's the reason why, another reason why I'm making these small reviews, because of the fact that I just want to make a little bit less effort into these in case of something going to happen. But that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed these new styles of videos. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? What do you think I should do better? What do you think I should talk about less? What do you think I should talk about more? And I'll see you next time. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and usual, remember to like and subscribe, I guess. Bye bye.